At 8 a.m. in Minneapolis, federal agents raided the private office of Somali diplomat Safiya Abdiwarsame.
At 8:12 a.m. in Minneapolis, the Somali Consulate felt calm and dignified. Polished floors, framed portraits, the quiet formality of diplomacy. But when federal agents opened Safiya Abdiwarsam's private office, the atmosphere shifted, the air grew heavier, and the truth could no longer hide. Behind the polished desk lay 24 black bundles marked with the CGNG insignia, stacked with the confidence of repetition. A concealed handgun rested in a velvet drawer. A silver suitcase lay beside it, filled with cash that no honest life could explain. For years, Safiya had been praised as a bridge between cultures, a voice of charity, community, and goodwill. But in that room, the illusion shattered. This was not diplomacy. By 10:47 a.m., admiration had vanished, replaced by spreadsheets, banking trails, and totals too large to ignore. Across the evidence table lay 12 years of financial movement, more than $186 million routed through charity grants, cultural foundations, and community outreach programs that existed only on paper. What appeared generous in public now revealed a second life, one carefully engineered in silence. 37 shell organizations, over 420 wire transfers disguised as support funding. Funds drifting across 5 states and 3 countries, converging into the same hidden accounts used to move both human transfers and narcotic shipments through protected diplomatic channels. Community programs were not relief. They were leverage. Donations were not compassion. They were keys that unlocked doors inside city offices and local institutions. The deeper investigators read, the clearer the truth became. This was not a diplomat serving a community. This was a system, and she was the one guiding its every movement. If these numbers shocked you, hit like so more people see the truth. Comment system. If you believe this was more than one person, it was a machine. At 3:26 p.m., Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport felt ordinary. Rolling suitcases, quiet announcements, travelers disappearing into terminals without notice. But one figure stood apart. Safiya Abdiwarsam arrived at the departure gate with diplomatic clearance, a first-class ticket, and a suitcase that carried no hesitation. Her flight was scheduled to leave the country within the hour. She did not run. She moved like someone who had escaped before. Federal agents closed in only after a final alert reached the command desk. A maritime signal tied to her name. A cargo manifest flagged 3 hours after departure. A vessel registered under Safiya's corporate network had left port already deep into open water. Its cargo did not list freight. It listed human transfers and covert narcotics. Consignments moved through the same network. And beneath that sealed manifest was the number that drained the room of air. 120 missing American children already in transit. Her arrest stopped one departure, but the clock had already started somewhere else. If you want the children rescued, tap like now. Comments save them to stand with the agents risking everything tonight. By 9:58 p.m., the coastline had vanished behind darkness, and the only thing breaking the still water was a cargo vessel pushing steadily toward international waters. It had been at sea for just over 3 hours, but 3 hours was enough. Enough for the ship to drift beyond easy reach. Enough for the children on board to disappear forever if the next decision came too late. Inside the federal command room, the atmosphere tightened as new data streamed in. Thermal scans confirmed movement on the upper decks. Intercepted chatter pointed to a private security force. Not amateurs, but 60 hired mercenaries armed with advanced rifles and compact launchers. Men accustomed to operating in places where witnesses never returned. The United States could not afford hesitation. FBI, DEA, DHS, and the U.S. Coast Guard activated a joint strike package designed only for missions where time was measured by heartbeats. 5 stealth drones lifted into the air, slipping above cloud cover like silent predators. 30 suicide intercept drones armed with disabling charges followed behind them, forming a protective web ahead of the tactical teams. 2 destroyer escorts shifted position offshore. A submarine slid beneath the waves toward the vessel's blind side. And on the surface, fast response boats prepared for the most dangerous phase, boarding. The order came without a dramatic countdown. It came as a single sentence: move. Secure the children first. The first drone feed showed the mercenaries spread across key choke points, stairwells, cargo doors, observation rails. They were not panicking. They were preparing. Floodlights snapped on, shadows shifted, positions tightened. Then contact was made. Fast approach craft surged forward as drones dropped into precision paths, mapping every angle of the ship in real time. Coast Guard teams hooked onto the hull, climbing with practiced coordination. A gust of wind pushed against them, but not one agent slowed. Every second spent outside was a second the children did not have. Inside the main deck, teams split. One group clearing the crew quarters, another pushing toward the reinforced cargo hold. The mercenaries reacted with cold efficiency, repositioning fast, forcing agents to adapt under pressure. A federal operator was hit during the advance, but refused evacuation, shielding a cluster of children already found trembling behind a bulkhead. Minutes stretched, breath shortened. Commands cracked through radios like sparks. The fight did not sprawl. It compressed hallway by hallway, door by door, until momentum shifted. The drones overhead released their disabling charges at pre-marked points, blocking the mercenaries' final fallback routes. Within 15 breathless minutes, 9 hostile operatives were neutralized, and the remaining forces surrendered under overwhelming pressure. And then, at last, the sound the entire operation had waited for. All 120 children secured. Repeat, all secured. In that moment, the ocean seemed to exhale. The danger was not gone. The network behind them still existed, but the night had been won. 15 minutes had rewritten the fate of 120 lives. By 12:12 a.m., the cargo vessel that had once drifted toward a dark destination now sat motionless beside a federal staging pier. Floodlights washed over its steel hull, revealing dents, rope marks, and the desperate fingerprints of a journey meant to erase 120 young lives. But the true weight of the night was not measured in the distance the ship had traveled. It was measured in what federal teams found once they began tearing it open. Layer by layer, the children, exhausted and shaken, were escorted gently toward medical tents. Some were too tired to speak. Others clung to the coats of agents who had risked everything for them. The sight alone shifted the mood of the pier. Victory was real, yes, but so was the cost of how close America had come to losing them. The vessel's interior told a different story, one cold, calculated, and industrial. Behind the reinforced cargo doors, investigators found a 3-tier holding structure welded into the ship's frame. Each tier contained rows of small partitioned compartments, just large enough for a child to sit but not stand. Metal latches had been installed recently. Air vents were covered with coarse mesh. No names were written anywhere, only numbers. It was a transport system, not an accident, not chaos, but planning. In the mechanical bay, agents discovered a waterproof tablet still powered on. Its last transmission lists were clear. 120 units confirmed. ETA to buyer, 19 hours. The number did not shock the room. They already knew the count. What shocked them was the final line. Next procurement window, 14 days. This wasn't a one-off operation. This was a supply chain. To understand its scope, forensic teams began unloading the containers stacked at the aft section of the ship. What they cataloged spread across 3 long tables. Documents showing 12 prior voyages tied to shell companies under Sophia's control. GPS logs from ports in 5 countries. Payment records linked to crypto wallets worth $41 million. International correspondence hinting at buyers who expected deliveries on fixed schedules. And then came the darkest discovery, a binder sealed in plastic hidden behind a panel inside the captain's cabin. Inside it were profiles of 311 missing children from U.S. states stretching from Minnesota to Virginia. Many files were marked with green check symbols. Others were tagged with red question marks. Taken together, the binder was undeniable proof. Safia's network had been operating long before this ship ever left port. Agents reviewing the documents fell silent. Even the most seasoned among them, people who had seen trafficking networks before, had never encountered one wrapped so tightly in diplomatic protection. Sofia had not just opened doors for criminals. She had built corridors where no questions could legally be asked. On deck, the children were finally boarded onto Coast Guard transport units, wrapped in blankets, shielded from the flashing lights, cared for with a gentleness starkly different from the brutality they had survived. Each child represented a life pulled back from the edge, a life the federal team refused to abandon. And as the last one was carried off the ship, an agent murmured words that carried across the pier. This wasn't a rescue. This was a prevention of something unthinkable. The ship was secured. The children were safe. But the investigation that was only beginning. By 6:40 a.m., long after the rescued children had been transported to safety and the cargo ship sealed under federal authority, the investigation shifted from the ocean to a different kind of battlefield, the paper battlefield. In a fortified federal operations center, analysts, financial agents, and counter-trafficking units gathered around screens glowing with data. The question was no longer who Sofia was. That answer had been exposed in cold, unmistakable detail. The real question was, how far did her network reach? And who else had helped her build it? When agents began pulling the digital threads, the system unraveled faster than anyone expected. Sofia's influence had not been built through fear or force. It had been constructed through access, the kind of access only diplomacy could grant. Her financial records revealed 37 shell foundations. But now a larger pattern surfaced. 9 U.S.-based nonprofit organizations, all registered legitimately, all receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars annually, and all funneling portions of those funds into accounts linked back to international handlers. What the public saw as charity was, in truth, a laundering circuit disguised as cultural outreach. The numbers grew heavier. Over $186 million had flowed quietly through these fronts over a 12-year period. But it was the timeline that stunned investigators most. Each surge in funding matched disappearances reported across various states. Not perfectly, not obviously, but consistently enough that no one in the room could call it coincidence. From there, the web widened. City records showed Safia attending more than 240 closed-door meetings with local officials, community leaders, and administrative directors. The agenda notes often looked harmless. Partnership development, resource allocation, support for vulnerable youth. But paired with the financial trail, it was clear these meetings were transactional, an exchange of goodwill for silence. And then came the darkest revelation. Inside a seized laptop from Sofia's office, agents uncovered correspondence written in plain neutral language, phrasing that sounded like logistics planning, not criminal coordination. But once decoded, each message referred to the movement of assets, inventory, or units. The timestamps aligned with trafficking events across 5 countries. Some messages were sent mere minutes before ships departed or children vanished. Sofia had not simply participated in the system. She had orchestrated it. Her diplomatic status gave her protection. Her charitable persona gave her credibility. Her network gave her power. And that power reached into corners no one expected, including the very institutions meant to protect the vulnerable. Federal investigators quickly realized they were not confronting a lone operator, but an embedded machine. One memo from an FBI financial analyst summarized the reality in words that chilled the entire task force. Remove her and the network bends. Remove the network and the city shakes. More subpoenas were issued. More files were unsealed. More names surfaced. Assistants, consultants, cultural advisors, even 2 mid-level local officials who had accepted donations totaling nearly $1. $3 million over several years. Each revelation widened the scope. Each discovery made clear how deeply Sofia had woven herself into legitimate systems. The woman arrested at the airport was not merely fleeing justice. She was fleeing exposure, because the empire she built was not made of walls or weapons. It was made of trust. And now, for the first time, that trust was cracking open. By the time dawn settled over Minnesota, the city looked unchanged. Commuters filled the roads, shop lights flickered on, and the hum of routine returned as if the night before had been nothing more than a passing storm. But inside the Federal Command Center, no one mistook normally for stability. The rescue, the arrests, the evidence, all of it had cracked open a truth far larger than Sophia herself. For the first time, investigators could see the shape of the machine she had built. And for the first time, they understood how long it had existed in plain sight. As agents worked through the final hours of operation, a pattern emerged across the newly unlocked files. Sophia had not selected her collaborators at random. Every person drawn into her orbit, whether through bribes, favors, or promises, had held a specific position in the system. A permit approver, a community liaison, a cultural program director, a school administrator, even 2 transportation officials who approved logistical routes without a single inspection. Each role by itself looked harmless. Together, they formed a lattice of access, so seamless that no red flag had ever appeared. The numbers confirmed the scale. 311 missing child profiles cross-referenced, with port activity in 5 countries. 12 documented voyages, each disguised beneath legitimate shipping manifests. More than $41 million circulating through accounts designed to vanish money the moment it appeared. And beneath all of that, a structure carefully built to survive, even if one piece was removed. But the strike on the cargo ship had done more than rescue 120 children. It had destabilized the entire network. By mid-morning, tip lines surged. Former associates stepped forward quietly at first, then openly. Bank officers reported suspicious transfers they once dismissed as charity. A former assistant provided details of closed-door meetings Sophia had insisted on attending alone. A local official confessed that he had never understood the true purpose behind the emergency youth relocation funds. She pressured him to approve. The city, once silent, had begun to speak. And as voices rose, one truth became unavoidable. Safia Abdiwaram had not merely manipulated the system. She had relied on its blind spots, the places where trust was assumed. Documents were waved through, and titles carried more weight than scrutiny. Her arrest did not collapse the world she built, but it exposed its skeleton, a map of vulnerabilities woven into institutions Americans trusted every day. And while federal teams celebrated the lives saved, they also confronted a deeper, heavier realization. If one diplomat could bend an entire community structure to her will, how many other systems might already be compromised without anyone noticing? By early afternoon, as agents filed their final reports, a quiet stillness settled over the operations room. Screens dimmed. Evidence crates were sealed. Voices softened. The night's adrenaline had faded, leaving only the weight of what had been prevented and what had been uncovered. One senior investigator, a man with decades of service, summarized it with a clarity no one else could express. Stopping her wasn't victory. It was a warning that danger no longer hid in alleys or abandoned warehouses. It hid in offices, in charities, in diplomatic signatures, and in systems built on trust. Sophia was in custody. The children were safe, but the country had been shown a truth impossible to forget. Sometimes the darkest threats are not the criminals we see, but the institutions we never question. If you made it to the end, you are part of the 1% who don't look away. Tap like, leave a comment, share this story so more people see the truth. When the final reports were filed and the lights inside the federal command room dimmed, one truth lingered longer than any document, any testimony, or any financial trail. What happened in this case was not just a criminal investigation. It was a strategic rupture, a moment where a hidden system collided hidden with accountability. This operation did not simply rescue 120 children. It exposed a vulnerability that had existed inside institutions people trusted for years. Diplomacy, charity, community, leadership. Titles that should have protected the innocent were instead weaponized to shield an empire operating in silence. And that is where the real consequence lies. Because networks like this do not survive through violence alone. They survive through trust, reputation, and unchecked authority. They grow in places where documents are approved without question, where signatures carry more weight than scrutiny, where influence is mistaken for virtue. The greatest lesson from this case is not about one woman, one ship, or one night at sea. It is about how easily a system can be bent when no one believes it can be. Strategically, the strike against this network did more than stop a single operation. It disrupted financial pipelines. It exposed shell organizations. It forced multiple agencies across multiple states to re-examine how humanitarian programs and cultural initiatives are monitored. And it raised a question no one can afford to ignore. If one diplomat could build corridors that no one questioned, how many other corridors still exist? This case reminds us that protection does not come from assuming good intentions. It comes from asking difficult questions, even when the answers are uncomfortable. It comes from oversight, from accountability, from the courage to look beneath polished surfaces and ceremonial titles. And above all, it reinforces a timeless truth. Evil does not always hide in darkness. Sometimes it stands beneath bright lights, wearing respectability. If you are still here listening to the story, it means you care about truth, about justice, about the protection of those who cannot protect themselves. Your voice matters more than you realize. Tap like if you believe cases like this must be brought into the light. Comment accountability if you agree that systems built on trust must also be built on oversight. And share this video. Not for numbers, not for views, but so more people understand how deeply these networks operate and how critical it is that we never look away. Because tonight was not just a rescue, it was a warning. And the more people who hear it, the harder it becomes for a system like this to ever hide.